Hello everyone, Jolene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back. I hope that you are all doing well. This is where I talk about the books that I'm reading and that I want to read. I like to read diverse books and I highlight Canadian literature. And if you are new, thank you so much for checking out my channel. Please hit subscribe and stick around. Today I am going to be talking about the books that I read in September. I am behind on my wrap-up videos, so I thought that I would play a little bit of catch-up. So first, let's take a look at the stats for September. This is according to Storygraph. I don't think that there was really anything too surprising for September. My top reading moods were emotional, reflective, sad, dark, hopeful, lighthearted, challenging, and adventurous. Pace is also pretty consistent with my usual 70% for medium, 20% slow, and 10% fast. Page numbers is a little different than usual. I think with 64% of the books less than 300 pages, it does kind of make sense. I did read several smaller or shorter books due to shorty September. So that's, being reflected here. And then 36% were books with 300 to 499 pages. 90% of the books that I read were fiction, which is a bit higher than usual. Only 10% was nonfiction. Nonfiction is usually less for me, but it's normally around the 25% range. The genres make sense, with literary and contemporary being the highest, and then that's followed by classics and magical realism, then LGBTQIA2S+, thriller, romance, poetry, mystery, and historical. So no surprises really with genres either. The average star rating seemed higher to me than I had really expected, with an average rating of 4.23. So overall, not so bad. At the end of August, the TBR stack was sitting at 1,526. The highest it's been is 1,530. So now we're going to bring that down a little bit more. And many of you know that I was part of the Battle of the BookTubers, which was a really fun competition that Danni Dabbles put together. And I will link the playlist below from all of the rounds. So please go and check them all out because it was just great fun. I was in round 4 and the idea was to find the booktuber that makes the best recommendations. I had 3 competitors, Krista, Jess, and Sam, and I will link them below as well. So spoiler alert, I didn't do so great in the competition, but I did get a chance to read some pretty cool books. I'm not going to go into any great detail here because I've already talked about them in the battle round, so that's where you can get more information if you want about any of these. But I do want to mention them here so we can take them off of the TBR stack. So first up is The Blue Castle by Lucy Maud Montgomery. This was the first adult book that I've read from her and I really, really liked it. Then a historical fiction book, Four Treasures of the Sky. This is by Tinghui Zhang. I hadn't heard of this book until the battles, so I was really glad to have learned about it and to get a chance to read it. And then 2 books in translation. Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, and this is translated from the Japanese by Ginny Tapley Takemori. And this was also a really good book for shorty September. And then finally, The Traveling Cat Chronicles by Hiro Arikawa, and this is translated from the Japanese by Philip Gabriel. And this was a surprise book for me because it's not a book I think I would have read had it not been for the battles and the competition. So with these 4 books, it brings the TBR stack to 1,522. From the 67 best Canlit books of the 21st century, I'll link all of that below too, I read Monkey Beach by Eden Robinson, and this was Eden Robinson's debut novel. I think that this is where some of the magical realism came into play. Like many of the other Indigenous books that I've read so far this year, there is a creature in the story, and Monkey Beach is famous for Sasquatch sightings. So also like those other Indigenous stories that I've read this year, someone has gone missing. And in this case, it's the main character, Lisa Marie's brother. His name is Jimmy. And from the get-go, I really liked Lisa Marie. She's spunky and quirky, and she can see things that most people can't. So there's also some very funny lines and some nostalgia in the book. Throughout the book, there is tension between reality and the supernatural, and also between Indigenous culture and non-Indigenous society. So in the background of this search for Jimmy, there are these flashes that Lisa Marie has, she has like of her childhood. And the backdrop includes World War II and residential schools. There's also some other really great characters like the grandmother. So overall, I liked this book, but there was something missing in the end. And I don't mind loose ends sometimes, but it didn't work as well for me. But that being said, I did enjoy the characters and the writing. And yeah, Eden Robinson is a great author. So from the 67 best Canlit books of the 21st century, I also reread Life of Pi by Yann Martel, which I just love. This also has magical realism and a beautiful story and message. And I can see how it might be hard for some people to get into it. But for me, since it was a reread, it was like, putting on a familiar shirt and just hanging out with old friends like Richard Parker, who I love. So I don't include rereads, but with Monkey Beach, this brings the TBR stack to 1,521. For the Reading Across Canada Book Club, in September, we read Behind You by Katherena Hernandez. This was one of my most anticipated books of 2024, and it's a difficult subject, but it's a book that I related to in many different ways. So the book is based on a real-life Scarborough stalker, murderer, and rapist, and he is never named in the book, but the character is used to show the mindset of the time, and the main character is Alma. She's working in film editing, and when she has to edit the film about the Scarborough stalker, she is reminded of her youth during the time period that she actually lived in the same neighborhood as this guy. So the story has a dual timeline, and it shows people's reactions, rightly or wrongly, to what it was like knowing there was someone dangerous in the neighborhood. And it also has an impact on how many years later Alma thinks of herself and how she's raising her own children. So I thought this was a very clever way to tell this story and to see how society handles information like this. I could relate to a lot of what was being said to young women and girls at the time. I remember this story very, very well. So this is worth a read if you don't mind the dark subject matter. So for the Reading Across Canada Challenge, the prompt was to read a Canadian book less than 200 pages. And I chose this very tiny book called Tiny Ruins by Nicole Haldoupis. So this little book, it's very tiny. It holds a lot of like little fragments that make for some very interesting reflection. This is a coming-of-age story about a young girl named Alana, and each page offers like a glimpse or a memory into Alana's life and thoughts that she is having, and she's trying to figure out like her world and her own sexuality, the people around her, and how she fits into all of that. So for such a tiny book, it really does pack a punch, and it has a lot of emotion. It was also perfect for Shorty September. Another book that worked for Shorty September, but that I read for Framed in September, which was an event hosted by several booktubers, Heather from Heather Gregg, Elizabeth from Bookwins and Books, Hannah from Hannah's Books, and Greg from Another Bibliophile Reads, and also Lindy from Lindy's Magpie Reads. I will link them all below so you can check out their channels. So they were encouraging people to read something art related in September, and then, if possible, to participate in art in some way. So the book I chose for that was the Vivian poems by Bruce Rice. So this is a book of poetry, and all of the poems are inspired by Vivian Meyer, who was a nanny, and at least that's how people knew her. But it turns out that she was also a brilliant photographer, and she photographed people on the streets of New York and Chicago and other places along her travels. So I hadn't heard about her before I picked this up, but I was so glad to have looked her up and researched her a bit, because then as I was reading the poems, I could picture some of the photographs that the poems were probably inspired by. So she really didn't become known or famous until after her death, when tens of thousands of photos were discovered. So I will leave a link below to her website, which has her photos and also I think a documentary. So all of that is worth checking out. I found this very fascinating, and I love when poetry and books, lead me to explore other things. So for Framed in September, I also participated in art. I do that a lot. I attended a concert. I went to see Jimmy Rankin, who I think is one of Canada's best singer-songwriters. I've seen him probably 4 or 5 times, and he always puts on a really, really great show. It's lots of fun. Some of you may know of him from the Rankin family, so I will put some photos up, and then at the end, I'm pretty sure that I have some videos, so I can play some video that I took, so you can hear him sing and play. So thanks again to the hosts who put this event out there. I think it's fantastic because, yeah, I do really love art, and I like being around it and learning about it and trying it. I just think that art makes our lives, and creativity makes our lives so much more rich. Okay, so let's do a check-in here with these books. So that brings the TBR stack to 1,518. Okay, a couple more here for you. Another book that was a most anticipated book for me was a book that I forgot to grab, but I'll put a picture up, and it was The Circle by Katherena Vermette. I was so excited to finally get to this book because it is the third, and I believe the final book that includes characters of the Strangers family. Now, these books are not marketed as a series or a trilogy. They're called companion novels, but I really think they should be more of a series. The first book, The Break, still my favorite. It tells a heartbreaking story, and it sets up the characters who are these strong Métis women. And then the second book, The Strangers, continues that story. And in my opinion, if you read it as a standalone, because they do say that you can, and that it's not a sequel, I actually think that you will miss a lot. I think you need the background of the characters and the story in order for it to make sense and to have a bigger impact of the book. So then there's The Circle, which I think if you were to read this on your own, without the other two, you will be completely lost. Of the 3 books, this is my least favorite, but it does continue the story when Phoenix gets out of prison and how that impacts the community and, you know, just the people around her. So it's told from several perspectives of people who have a stake in her getting out, including, you know, her own family, her victim, and family members of the victim. So if you've read the first 2 books and you are invested in these women and these characters, then this is definitely worth a read, but I still caution you that it doesn't quite live up to the other 2 books, and I think it would be very confusing read on its own. Vermette is still one of my, you know, favorite authors, and I do look forward to seeing what other novels and stories she brings us, especially if there's no longer going to be about this particular family. Now, for the final book I read in September, I have another popular book that people have been loving, and it's Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. So for some reason, I don't know, octopus in books are very popular right now, so it seems. I loved The Soul of an Octopus by Cy Montgomery. I enjoyed Lily and the Octopus by, Stephen Rowley, something, which didn't actually have an octopus in it. And now Remarkably Bright Creatures, which has Marcellus, who is an octopus, living in an aquarium, and this is set in Washington. So this story isn't really about Marcellus, though. It's actually more about the humans who interact with Marcellus, and kind of like Marcellus's observations of them. And I liked that part the best. The voice of Marcellus was well done. And I wish that there had been more of that. You know, that's what made me fall in love with books like The Art of Racing in the Rain with Enzo, the dog, as the narrator. But in Remarkably Bright Creatures, the octopus isn't, he has a voice, but it's not the main narrator. So the main character is Tova, who is also very interesting. She works at the aquarium as a cleaner, and she's dealing with a lot of loss and grief. Her husband died, and then her son has been missing because of a boating accident. And Tova and Marcellus form this bond, and this becomes a bit of a mystery story, since Marcellus is trying to convey to Tova what happened to her son. And that's where it seemed like a bit far-fetched for me. How would this octopus know what happened to her son? But I tried to suspend disbelief and just enjoy the story. I really liked the characters in this, and it was heartwarming. But like I said, sometimes it was just a bit much for me. I still ended up giving it, I think, 4 stars. So worth a read. If you like books with animals and just something that kind of pulls at the heartstrings a little bit. So with these last 2 books, that brings the TBR stack to 1,516 for now. I still have to do my October, November, and December wrap up. So we might see the stack hit below 1,500, but of course I also have books that I've hauled, so we will see where we end up in the end. Please let me know if you have read any of these books, or if you are hoping to read any of them. If you can remember as far back as September and the books that you read, please let me know what books you enjoyed that you would recommend. And if you aren't feeling up to being chatty, maybe just leave an octopus emoji to let me know that you are here and that you're around. I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.
Let's go dancing tonight. My clock has been taking me back. It tells me the time is just right. When I woke up this morning, I had that feeling I call love something blue. the past behind. Well, you know that I love you, baby, and you know that makes me true. Yeah, and there's no meaning, 'cause I know how do you feel. Yeah. It's alright. Yeah, no. Whoa! That's the way it should be. Yes, indeed. And there's no meaning less, 'cause I know. Hey! And there's no meaning less, 'cause I know. How do you feel? One more time on the road. And there's no